What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the Occupy Fantasy YouTube channel. We're here for some FanDuel Fantasy Baseball, DraftKings MLB DFS picks, and lineup advice for tonight, May 4th. I'm Brian Jester, co-founder here at Occupy Fantasy, joined by our MLB DFS daily plug writer for FanDuel and DraftKings, Chris Rooney. What's up, Chris? A little bit of chaos before we get started here.
Brian, getting ready for the evening. I was just saying to you before we hit the go live button here. It's fun to think about kind of all the combinations to roster with Jacob deGrom, the best pitcher on the planet all day. And then obviously we get the news just now. For those of you who haven't seen it yet, Jacob deGrom has been scratched by the Mets. He is not pitching tonight, so we no longer have him available to us. So I guess for the next 30 minutes, you and I will be talking through what do we do now. And tonight is a big night, I would say, in the DFS world for MLB, because we have a pretty large contest on DraftKings. I know you won some tickets for. There's a risk-free contest on DraftKings people are playing. There's obviously plenty of satellites on both FanDuel and DraftKings, so a lot of fun stuff to go through here, right?
Yeah, big slate, lots of games, and before this Jacob deGrom news, we had a pitcher with the highest projection ever in the history of our MLB Occupy model. Pretty impressive. And now it goes down the drain. But honestly, Chris, it opens up a lot of things, and we'll talk about that here in a second. But just for those of you just tuning in now, a little bit of what to expect here. We'll be here till about 5:30 p.m. Eastern, answering your questions. If you have questions, hop in the live chat to the right of the screen. Ask them. We'll answer them here for you. But we'll talk about some of the top stacks for FanDuel and DraftKings, the best pitching options now without deGrom, and just some general lineup construction strategies as well. Chris, let's walk through this timeline. deGrom slated to start tonight, OF index of 31 in our model. We write about him in the plug, obviously. Very easily a top play, projected for like 1 billion strikeouts. We get news, we get a rogue tweet at 4:50 p.m. Eastern. Only person reporting it was an editor for MILB.com, the minor league website. And trying to get confirmation. We did get confirmation like 2 minutes before we go live. So, Chris, he is not starting tonight. Do we know who's starting in his place yet?
We have an opener. It's Tim Britton at Tim Britton on Twitter, saying that Miguel Castro will, parenthetical, presumably be an opener in the place of Jacob deGrom. So we don't necessarily know what the bulk inning plan was. That minor league reporter for the Syracuse Mets did announce a change to their starting pitcher for their opening day tonight from Jordan Yamamoto to Jared Eichhoff. Certainly is possible Yamamoto maybe gets the bulk of the work there. He's got to get his ass down to St. Louis from Syracuse, New York, so maybe that's part of the problem there.
Yeah, so again, this is something we'll closely monitor, and I'm sure Chris will be on Twitter here throughout the show. If we get any update there, we'll let you know. But it does mean, honestly, Chris, when we have a deGrom slate like this, who's going to be super popular, we actually get it makes the slate a little bit more interesting. For someone like me who has a bunch of tickets to the 1500 on DraftKings tonight, definitely makes it more interesting. And for someone like you grinding out those tickets, I know you've been picking up a bunch of the 1-1-1 tickets on DraftKings, the Immaculate Innings. So
yep. That's next week, so we'll be back here to obviously talk about that for everybody else who's been winning tickets for that, hopefully.
Perfect. So we're going to try to rack up some more of those tonight. So deGrom news aside, Chris, let's start with some top stacks. And I'm going to scroll down here. Sure. This is the daily plug, OccupyFantasy.com. Chris and our writer, Michael, put this together every single slate with 5 or more games. And I'm actually going to scroll down to our top stack section. And Chris, you guys wrote up 4 or 5 stacks tonight. Why don't you walk me through some of the options and what we're thinking about?
Love the American League East tonight, Brian. I mean, that's kind of the strange thing about how this worked out. It does look like, well, we'll get into this in a second. Boston Red Sox are the top stack across the board for us. So when I say across the board, I see you have our plug up here. But if you actually look at our stacks dashboard model page, that 1-1-1-1 represents the OF index ranking, the projected isolated slugging or ISO ranking, the projected weighted on base average or WOBA ranking, and obviously the last one is the team total. So when I say across the board, I'm reading those 4 metric numbers just so everybody is aware of the language there. They're the top on a massive slate here. And the reason for that, our daily plug kind of covers this, is the Detroit Tigers are on pace to maybe be one of the worst modern era baseball teams of all time. Currently on pace for 43 wins out of 162 games. That's terrible. Have the lowest team ERA, lowest bullpen ERA, bullpen giving up the most home runs as a unit in baseball to pitch to opposing hitters. So as much as we love the Red Sox tonight, and the Red Sox do have a formidable lineup, one of the highest scoring lineups in all of baseball thus far this season, I want everybody to understand we actually like the Red Sox even more tonight, specifically because of the Tigers. We're not just targeting the Red Sox because they have good players. We're targeting the Red Sox because the matchup is a dream matchup for these hitters tonight. The problem is they're expensive. So we're going to have to find some other places to go. One of the best stacks behind them, you have them on the screen here, is the Houston Astros. The Astros actually do have Yordan Alvarez. He is the top ranked hitter in the Occupy model tonight. So that's certainly a nice place to start with Houston. Kind of jumping into the model on my end here to kind of talk about Houston a little bit more. Kyle Tucker, he's our third highest ranked hitter for the Astros. He's just 3,100 on DraftKings, so there's some value there. We're going to have to, well, you know what? This is part of the moving parts of this slate, Brian. I mean, part of what I was thinking about all day long is what are the value plays in some of our top stacks I can start with to try to get up to Jacob deGrom. We don't have to do that anymore. Even if we're paying up on DraftKings, Trevor Bauer, Aaron Nola, a little bit less expensive than deGrom was going to be. So there's actually slightly more flexibility here that allows us to be able to kind of jam some of these better hitters in our lineups, right? So
yeah, because I mean, we were looking at guys like Bobby Dahlbeck, Hunter Renfroe, Kyle Tucker, these guys towards the bottom half of some of these top stacks to fit them in. And this kind of leads to a question that we have in the chat now. So from Ken, it says top stacks are expensive. Any super cheap pitchers that we like? So Chris, there's a couple ways to go about this. We can continue with the pricey pitchers and just basically sub out Trevor Bauer, who's number 2 in our model, or I guess number 1 now with Jacob deGrom out, and kind of build similarly as we were anticipating all day. Or we could drop down a little further and be able to pay up for some of these top stacks. So a question to you, I know you normally build 20 lineups. Any cheap pitchers that you're looking to get into your lineups?
Well, the first thing, and for anybody who's watching, I want you to understand that I think if you go to our model right now, Miguel Castro for the Mets is 4,000 on DraftKings, minimum on both DraftKings and FanDuel at the top of the model. That is a little bit misleading. He's just an opener, just a reliever. He's not actually going to get there for us, so we'll adjust that on our end. Looking at our top pitchers here, I kind of like this area of Huascar Ynoa, Nick Pivetta, Justin Dunn, Jorge Lopez. And the reason I'm kind of looking at that is those prices are fairly reasonable for those 4 guys. If I were to pick a favorite, I swear to you, whenever we do these, I'm in the Boston area. I'm not a homer, but Nick Pivetta does jump out. Minus 180 moneyline favorite. The line moving in Boston's direction, 15 cents is pretty significant. Decent 1.13 strikeouts per inning pitched projection and a 12% bump for weather. So I actually think I might prioritize him a little bit more now in some builds. We still like Huascar Ynoa. We wrote him up. We still like Trevor Bauer if you're playing specifically on DraftKings against the Cubs tonight. And obviously Aaron Nola is another option, but I do think we have weather in Philadelphia in Milwaukee that we have to look at as well. We rely on our source there, Roto Grinders employs Kevin Roth for that information. I think that game is a weather game, so we got to kind of circle back on that.
Yeah, and Solid Picks asking in the chat, please help with the weather tonight. So let's discuss it really quickly. I'll bring up the weather dashboard in our model, which doesn't give the full picture. The weather dashboard is mostly intended to see where the boosts are for hitters and pitchers in each game. However, it seems like just reading through some of the weather reports, there aren't too many trouble spots in the sense that a lot of these games are going to rain early and then have a late start. The only game, Chris, I think that has issues, at least for pitchers and potentially batters, is Houston and New York. But even the meteorologists think that's going to play.
Houston and New York, and Kevin Roth actually did write up Milwaukee at Philadelphia as well with some kind of delay, but he thinks it'll at least, the worst he's projecting is a late start and play there. So I guess if you want to be safe tonight, you can avoid Houston, New York, Milwaukee, and Philadelphia for pitching and focus on, some of the guys we have ranked at the top here that aren't dealing with those factors. And that would be Trevor Bauer. That would be Huascar Ynoa. And that would especially be Nick Pivetta, Brian, with our projected boost for pitching, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Pivetta gets the 12% boost, and the Prince in the chat's asking, okay, so DeGrom's no longer pitching. Trevor Bauer's not on the FanDuel slate, so we have to think of the best pitching option over there. And I think Pivetta does probably take the cake there. He does rank a little bit behind Nola and
Mhm.
Atlanta's pitcher, but he does have the highest money line outside of San Diego's Ryan Weathers, and we know that getting the win and the quality start is so important on FanDuel because they're scoring. So I tend to agree with you, Chris. I think Pavetta is probably the top option there. Just got to be careful because you can only stack so many players from one team on FanDuel.
Yeah, we can. I believe we can get up to 5, including the pitcher, right? So
Yep.
you can do 4 Boston hitters, and Pavetta can be your 5th Boston player. He's had a strong season so far. I don't think we gave him much narrative in the plug, but the Red Sox, I believe, have won all but one game that he's pitched this year. He got the win in their head-to-head with DeGrom last week, which was totally unexpected. But he's gone 5+ innings in 4 of 5 starts. Averaging just under a strikeout per innings pitched, but we do like his matchup against the Tigers, who again are just they're horrible. I don't want to mince words and try to wax poetic about the Tigers in any way here. They're off to a pretty horrible start tonight or this season, so we don't expect much tonight. Is what I meant.
And to be honest, Pavetta's OF index of 15.2. For those of you not too familiar, anything 17 or above is elite.
Mhm.
And Chris, on some slates, 15 would probably get us. He would be near the top of the model on most slates, right? A lot of times we don't have elite options. So with DeGrom off the slate, Trevor Bauer at 19, there's no true elite options on FanDuel. Given our OF index values, so Pavetta at 15.2, despite ranking 4th or 5th overall in the DraftKings slate, probably the top option on FanDuel. So
Yeah, it
uh,
actually looks like before we move on, Brian, it looks like Trevor Bauer dropped in our model a little bit. He's now sitting at a 15.1, so even more of a case to be made for looking elsewhere, even on DraftKings. Got Nola, Enoa. That's tough, right? Nola and Enoa. We have Philadelphia and Atlanta's pitchers, Aaron Nola, Huascar Enoa, and Nick Pivetta as our top 3 tonight.
Yep, sounds good. So, all right, it is 5:15. We'll be here till 5:30 p.m. Eastern. If you like what you've heard so far, make sure you click that subscribe button right below the video. Get access to whenever we go live or upload any new content here on YouTube. Give us a thumbs up, show your support. Us know that you like this type of content. And yeah, if you want to join our Discord channel where we're talking about every daily fantasy sport, just click the join button right below the video here on YouTube. Get you access to our OccupyFantasy.com members only Discord. So. Let's see. We talked about the pitchers. We talked about the hitters. Solid Picks is asking in the chat, what about the Rangers bats? And so I'm bringing up the stack dashboard, which ranks every stack on the slate for us in our Occupy Fantasy model. And Texas ranks towards the bottom third of the pack. They do have a money line or team total movement in their favor of plus 0.3 runs. But Chris, any love for Texas tonight? I know you're a trust the model guy. I doubt you're dipping that deep.
Yeah, as far as fully stacking, I'm probably not going that far down. For those of you in our Discord, we had a pretty good discussion yesterday about the power of stacking and how it actually looks like some of our stack rankings are even more powerful than our individual hitter rankings. Those of you who haven't been reading the Daily Plug, A, you should. But B, we've actually discovered over the first month of the year here that all the things we throw at you in the model, OF index, isolated slugging, weighted on base average, StatCast data. So far, the OF index for individual hitters has correlated the most with actual fantasy points on that evening's slate. So the first thing that I would say about Texas tonight is let's go look at the lineup and see if there's any individual hitters that we like. Because just because we don't like the stack, Brian, doesn't mean that there aren't individual batters that may be interesting to us. And what I see here is that it looks like I kind of like guys that have OF index 5 or greater if they're, not stacks, if they're one-off plays. So it looks like Charlie Culberson, Nick Solak, Adolis Garcia, and Joey Gallo are probably the only Rangers that I would recommend putting in my player pool or any of my lineups tonight. Charlie Culberson is at the top. He's got a decent set of metrics across the board here. 6.5 OF index, pretty affordable salary on both FanDuel and DraftKings, and even on Yahoo if we're playing over there, which I know you are trying to grind up that bankroll, Brian. Maybe you can talk about that a little bit. But Culberson with a 287 ISO, more than 100 points higher than the elite threshold of 170, and an elite WOBA at 400. So there are options for Texas tonight. I just would not fully stack them. Hope that answers the question.
Yeah, I would say to whoever asked the question in the chat, if you're looking for one reason to stack Texas, it's the StatCast data for J.A. Happ. If you scroll to the right of the model, you can see the exit velocity and batted ball distance rankings
Yeah.
for every player on the slate over the last 2 weeks. And Jay Happ in the bottom 100 of both metrics, which means opposing batters have been hitting the ball hard and far
Mhm.
against them. So again, if you are dipping down the model, that's one reason to do it. And the question from the Prince asking, so if we're starting with the bats in our lineup, do we start with the daily plug at Occupy Fantasy or do we start with the Occupy model? And, if you're just playing one lineup, just go to the plug. The plug takes all the data and puts it into one easy to read format. If you're playing a bunch of lineups or you're looking to make decisions on your own, you can go through the model and look through all the various fields. And if you're making a bunch of lineups, figure out how far down you want to go. But, Chris, there's not much need to go beyond what the daily plug is saying if you're building one lineup and you're fully stacking.
Yeah, exactly. Let me, I guess, answer that a different way for you, DePrince. The information that you see in the plug, it comes from the model. So if you're just building one team, the plug is designed to give you the top plays from that day's model. So I would go there. That's definitely the right way to go with it.
Yeah, exactly. And do we have a question from Sankey in the chat, longtime member? What's up, Sankey? Glad to see you back. So he took a break with MLB, just starting to get back into things. And he's referencing this table that I have on screen here, which we have in the stack section of the Daily Plug that talks about the
Uh-huh.
correlations between different metrics and actual fantasy output. And basically what this is saying, Sankey, these numbers, the higher the number, the better, the higher the correlation. What this is saying is that OF Index, our proprietary metric at OccupyFantasy.com that we've back tested to do this, surprise, actually does this and is the best predictor of fantasy success over just isolated power, over just weighted on base average, over projected ownership, over actual ownership. Chris, OF Index is the key, and if you're making decisions for your lineup, that's the number one metric you should look at.
Yeah, absolutely. I just addressed that this table is kind of a disaster. We're going to work on a better infographic for you. Correlation, if you're not familiar with this, if that's kind of beyond you a little bit, it'll be a number that's between -1 and 1. So the closer it is to either extreme is good. Obviously, the first bar that's very green, that's just how close is our projected ownership in the model every night at lock to the actual ownership. I would actually say that number is not very good, even though it's sort of quote unquote the best there. But projected ownership does actually have a fairly strong relationship with fantasy point production at 0.135. There is what you see. The only, well, now there's two, I guess, projected WOBA, which suggests high floor. That's, on base average. That's how often does a batter get singles, doubles, walks, that's a good metric to look at. But OF index is better than all of them. That's what this table is supposed to be telling you. So we'll think about maybe better ways to communicate that a little bit more clearly down the road here. But that's why we started including that in the daily plug. And I will say we do actually try to update that table at least every other day, if not every day, because obviously we get new information after every slate.
Yep, absolutely. So we got a couple questions here in the chat. It's 5:20. We will be here until 5:30 p.m. Eastern. Let's start here. Let's get with another team-specific question. Nick is asking about the Royals against the worst listed pitcher on FanDuel. So let's see here. I'm gonna bring up the Occupy model, and let's see here. Sam Hinges, who I admittedly have never heard of, near the bottom of our pitcher model. The Royals have an opposing team total of just over 5 runs, and KC ranks about in the middle of the pack. I would say, Chris, they look like a better low-risk team with a high team total and a high weighted on base average, but a lower isolated power ranking.
Yeah, we have a little bit of a line movement towards Cleveland tonight, so I guess that's somewhat concerning if you're backing the Royals tonight. I'm not sure I would use them as a high-risk stack. I agree with you on that. Very balanced lineup. We look at the top 7 hitters on the Royals specifically in our model. They have an OF index within 1.5 points of one another. There's just no elite plays here. The highest hitter is a 5.8. It's good. It's just there are better spots tonight in our model, and those are the ones that we gave you as our top stacks here.
Yeah, again, a high weighted on base average for most of these guys. And again, if you're playing low risk contests, looking for mini stacks or one offs, Royal's not the worst option, but for high risk contests, doesn't look like the upside is there. T Nasty says, do you guys keep players with low OF index in your stacks, or do you find another player with a higher OF index? And this is a great question. In a sport as heavy correlation as MLB, you want to play the correlation. If a guy ranks and has let's say a 6 OF index, but you could pair up a guy with his teammate, but his OF index is 5 or 5.5. you're going to go with that correlation almost every time in high risk contests. So Chris, unless the difference is so drastic, I don't mind dropping down and keeping a lower OF index player as long as I'm stacking them properly in my lineup.
Yeah, I mean, a good example is I would say Boston tonight. We have them as our top option, and we actually have their two-hole hitter, Alex Verdugo, ranked pretty low. If you're just kind of building straight off of OF index, you would never include Alex Verdugo in your lineups. But particularly in like an MME situation, you absolutely want to make sure that you have him in your 4-man and 5-man Red Sox stacks somewhere. This index ranking is telling you to deprioritize him in general compared to the guys ranked ahead of him. But because we like Boston and because Verdugo is going to have a high number of at-bats out of that two-hole, you should absolutely make sure that he's included in your player pool. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Another question here, which we tried to touch on at least once a week. We get this question pretty often. And it really is the foundation of MLB DFS and stacking. And the question in the chat is, I've noticed more 3-3-2 or 3-2-2 stacks winning GPPs this season. Usually it's 4 or 5-man. Any take on this as far as strategy? And I would say, Chris, that a lot of times this is just selection bias. People are remembering the stacks that they see win that are different and not actually keeping track. But we always keep track. We know the numbers. The field uses those types of stacks actually more than they use 4 and 5-man stacks. So they do win a little bit more frequently, but the leverage lies in fully stacking. And Chris, it comes down to minimizing the number of things you need to get right.
Yeah, and it's really contest selection. And I know that's obviously something that you preach daily to everybody that comes here and watches shows for every sport that we cover here at Occupy. I'd wager solid picks that those winning 3-3-2s or 3-2-2s, you're probably seeing those more in those super large field GPPs, 10,000 or more lineups in the contest. Brian, I know you like to play more of those smaller field type contests where that leverage with kind of 5-man stacks, those 5-3s or those 5-2-1s or 4-4s on FanDuel have even more power to get you to the top because you're competing against less people and therefore there are less weird combinations of lineups in the overall field of that contest. So yeah, I mean, those weird stacks definitely do get there, but it's harder for us to predict what they're going to be. I mean, you're definitely going to be able to find nights where like a 2-2, 1-1-1, whatever, right? Like wins, but it's going to be super hard for us to actually identify that and pick that accurately on a nightly basis. So that's why we don't really like to go there. We like to focus on correlation and going with the super stacks, if you will, fully stacking lineups.
Yeah, so exactly. It's minimizing the things you need to get right. And again, we're not hunting for the optimal lineup. If we were, we would probably play just a bunch of one-offs all around the board. We're just trying to get the most points to win the GPP. We're not trying to get the most points that are entirely possible. We're trying to beat everyone in the contest. And the best way to do that is to fully stack. And any stack-heavy sports, whether it's NHL, NFL, MLB, League of Legends, that's the way to do it. So don't let those results deter you. And we will see some weeks where it'll seem like every single day is a bunch of mini stacks beating you. Over the long haul, fully stacking is the way to go. Kyle says, do you give batting order priority when weighing stacks? How much? So OF Index does take batting order into account, and the stack dashboard does take batting order into account. But Chris, it varies from slate to slate, right? And when we have a high-ranking stack where all 9 hitters rank favorably, we might end up on some of the bottom of the order guys, especially if we need to fit them in with stud pitchers.
Yeah, my answer may not be the one you were looking for, Kyle, but the weight that I give, probably that we all give to batting order is just how close the hitters are to one another. I mean, we obviously want to get the hitters that are at the top of our rankings for a specific stack, but it's more important for us to make sure that we're maximizing correlation. By doing that, we want to make sure that hitters hit close to each other. If we're, especially with our secondary stacks, we don't want. It's not great to roster like the 9 hitter, the 6 hitter, and the 3 hitter because it's almost kind of like losing the power of the correlated stack. You really want these guys to be in a position where one guy gets on base and the next couple of hitters in your stack have an opportunity to drive him in because that's how the points really start to rack up for you in your lineups. So as far as batting order is concerned, just try to make sure that you get guys that are hitting at least within 2 spots of one another. Depending on how many players are using in your stack, that'll obviously dictate, how wide you can go with that, right?
Yep, and that's a big part of why our stacking tool in our lineup builder does allow you to choose how far in between players in the stack are and how wide the full stack goes, because it really does maximize the potential of your stack. So totally not the FBI is asking, is he shadow banned because of its Nats take? Yeah, we intentionally, Ed, we intentionally ignore any homer takes, and saying that the Nats are going to score 15 runs in 2 innings certainly qualifies. So it is 5:28. The Daily Plug has been updated with the DeGrom news. The model's constantly being updated. Chris, let's get a 30-second to 1-minute rundown of the overall picture for tonight's slate for those who maybe missed the beginning or are trying to piece everything together.
Pitching is way different. We have a lot more options that we can consider now. I would say that the salary is a lot more flexible, so we can get to top hitters in our lineups, which allows us to pay up for the best hitters in our top stacks. I strongly think and feel, and I kind of sense that you do as well, that we should be prioritizing the Boston Red Sox tonight. They're our favorite stack in our model. We also like the Houston Astros and the Yankees, but that's a weather game. So if that scares you, if you're not going to be able to pay attention until 7 p.m. for a postponement announcement, just ignore them. We also like the Toronto Blue Jays and the Tampa Bay Rays. They're some of our other stacks. And yeah, so that's sort of.
And the Orioles, we can't forget them, right?
I know you guys want a slate to come up where we're actually going to be on your Orioles, you Maryland boys, but it's not tonight. They are one of our least favorite in the model. So no, not going to be an Orioles night.
We're going to be holding our breath for a long time when we're waiting for an Orioles slate.
Right.
So
exactly.
Let's see here. Kyle says, there's a final question. Let me rephrase a bit. Would you take a lower ranked 8-9-1 versus 3 one-off players with a better OF index? So it depends. For your secondary stacks, I would still probably get the correlation for smaller contests. Large field contests, yeah, we're looking for 5-1-1-1s or 5-2-1s where we're trying to get some random one-offs to get some power and score points. But if you're playing, 100-player contests, satellites, smaller GPPs, go with 5-3 stacks or 5-2-1 stacks. And by nature, you're going to end up with some lower OF index players. But the power of the correlation is what takes you over the top. So, Chris, do you have any final thoughts on that?
Well, we just got one question here. Someone apologize. Let me get this for you. To Prince asking about the Braves, the Atlanta Braves. Yeah, they look strong. We like their starter tonight. They're actually tied with the Yankees in the model for the 5th best stack. So certainly worth looking at. Their team totals increasing. They have solid rankings across here. So there's nothing wrong with considering them for some of your secondary options either. Just before we wrap up and log off here, it looks like Freddie Freeman, Ronald Acuna, Marcell Ozuna, the usual suspects are the top plays there for the Braves. The problem with them, looking at this really quickly on both FanDuel and DraftKings, they're expensive. So it's going to be hard to fit a team like that with Boston if we're prioritizing them. So this model, guys, will keep updating right up until lock as confirmed lineups roll in for all teams. So make sure you check that. We'll make sure the Daily Plug is updated with projected ownership and those top plays. You can consider the Daily Plug final probably within about 15 minutes of the show ending here because I'm going to have to go in and do all that for you. But it looks like it's going to be a good night for MLB DFS, Brian. I wish you luck in the big, I think it's the Mega Gold Glove on DraftKings. I hope we're celebrating something cool tonight.
Yeah, I'd take a $250K payday. Yeah, we'll certainly celebrate that if I take it down. So that'll do it for the show. We appreciate everyone tuning in and listening. For more MLB DFS information, check out OccupyFantasy.com. You can read the Daily Plug, which Chris and our writer Michael puts together every main slate. You can check out the Occupy model, which ranks every batter, pitcher, and stack with weather information and projected ownership for both FanDuel and DraftKings. And you can check out our MLB stacking guide in our beginner's strategy guide, which is fully free, OccupyFantasy.com. If you like what you saw here, make sure you click the subscribe button. Get notified whenever we go live. We're live 3 to 4 times a week. Our next shows will be tomorrow night for PGA, Saturday for UFC DFS, and we'll also upload some other videos as well throughout the weeks. Give us a thumbs up to show your support. Let us know that we should continue to make these types of videos. Any questions you have, you can always hit us up, either commenting on this YouTube video, or you can click the join button right below the video to get access to our Discord channel, where our members and our staff are chatting about all daily fantasy sports. OccupyFantasy.com/Discord is where you can learn more about that. So you can follow Chris on Twitter at CDR02989. You can follow me at BrianJesterFF. Follow us at Occupy Fantasy. For Chris, I'm Brian. We appreciate everyone listening, and good luck tonight, and we'll talk to you soon.